Chapter 3. The Will of the Wise Part 2. Sorry for the trouble. You can read thoughts too. Sena looked at the Philosopher's Stone interim, which was already cowering like a completely abandoned puppy, and breathed a big sigh. These extreme ups and downs were another sign of being young. Anyway, it was just a matter of what I thought. In the end, it didn't matter if she was just a program or if she had an astral. It was a choice between killing her existence or not. To be honest, Sena was confused. But at the same time, he was happy for her. There were quite a few problems with the language, but that was just because the example used was a bad example. Although she had a sense of mission as an NB, she was embarrassed to declare herself a bride, so straightforwardly based on her own idea, but she was also strangely happy to do so. If he had stayed on Earth, it would have been a fantasy or delusion for Sena to even think of dating a woman, let alone getting married in the future. Recently, however, the rate of women arriving and staying was soaring, and the ability to make sound judgments was lost at the stage of Kiriko and the other's political marriage. He could not grasp the figures anymore. I feel like I'm desperately trying to come up with an excuse to accept this. If the political marriages continue in the future, even if he had the option of refusing, he really had no reason not to accept her. After all, she was the thing created for Sena, the person who could be called Fuku's sister. Anyway, he could educate her properly in the future, and it was his duty to do so. I understand. You don't have to destroy yourself. Whether or not you have an astral is not important. I can't kill the ego that has just sprouted. I'm so happy. Thank you very much. Now, take me as your bride. With moist eyes, the Philosopher's Stone interim stared expectantly. Wait a minute. Calm down. Before talking about wives, shouldn't we start by getting to know each other better? I think we should make sure to take the necessary steps there. I know you very well, Sena. From the day I was installed until today, I know what you've felt and what you've seen. Every bit of it. After sharing a bed with Sauron-san, I even know what he did in the bathroom. It seemed to have been recorded by instinct, not function. Stop. Don't say another word. Erase it from your memory as well. Otherwise, I'll be more tempted to destroy myself. When Sena realized once again that she was the only person who knew everything about him, including his horrible history, he honestly felt that the existence of the Philosopher's Stone interim, with its individuality and its innocence, was a little scary. That can't be helped. Even if I look back at it now, it's still quite moving. Don't worry. It's normal for a young man. Thank you for comforting me. I'm so happy I want to cry. But from now on, I won't be able to hide anything from you. It makes you feel better, doesn't it? Acceptance of self leads to growth. I have a role to play in that. We all had parts of ourselves that we didn't want others to see. Because no one else knows about them, we are convinced that we have to hide them or do not want to be seen. This is why the internally installed NB had the effect of self-development by providing another objective point of view to ease the obsession and bring mental stability. Oh, I see. That's why you chose to love me. It was also an expression of her willingness to accept all of Sena once again now that she had become an individual. She was smiling and happy, knowing or not about Sena's thoughts. Let's just say I was too young to be crying my eyes out there. Sena had lost the battle as long as she was even a little bit conscious of being cute. Sena's dictionary didn't include rejecting someone who loved him. Anyway, there's no need to rush, right? Because things like sex and children are much further down the road, even in real life. If you accept me, I will wait for you. You and I will always be together, no matter what time it is. That's why we have infinite time. And you don't like Philosopher's Stone, do you? You're giving me a name? What's my name? Her smile could be described as if the sun had suddenly appeared on her face. I just thought of it on the spur of the moment. How about Nayuta? It sounds like a higher being further along than Nana, doesn't it? Of course, there were units of numbers above that, but this was a safe choice for a female name. Yes, it's a good name. I'm happy, I'm so happy. Just like Fuku. Her smile was so big that even he couldn't help but smile. He had given her the name because he wanted to get rid of any feelings of guilt he might have had, but her smile blew away all those feelings of guilt in one fell swoop. I'm glad you love it, but the question is how to explain Nayuta to Kariko. I feel the same way as Mickey and Kirchi. It's fine to say that the installed NB has a will. I also don't want to insist on my friendship with Sana-san to the outside world. Wait a minute. The same as Kirchi's? What's wrong with that? No, assuming you have an astral, you can't marry the person who built the program, but I was wondering who would be considered your creator. Of course, when the program came of age, that law was deactivated after a certain amount of time. I called her Mother Washu, didn't I? So even if I have an astral, there won't be any problem with our marriage. Yeah, that's good. Great. She looked like Fuku. She had the same expression that Kariko and the others had at the wedding on the moon. You know a lot of things, don't you? I thought you said you couldn't access Washu's databank. Is that your instinct too? Yes. The basic knowledge necessary for daily life has been maintained, and since I have access to the magical elements personality realm, I can use that data bank. It will also be possible to replace lost functions with magic in the future. When he finally calmed down, Nayuta dropped another oversized bomb. Huh? What did you say? I feel like I just heard something amazing. I have access to the area that controls and monitors the elemental system and have made friends with the personalities there. But you're the one who created the connection in the first place, remember? Don't you remember? Me? I was sick with the magic cold, and I was. I remember that you said you had an astral link with something. I heard a voice saying something about magic element. Groping through the faint threads of his memory, Sana concentrated on trying desperately to remember. Yes, I heard a voice saying all kinds of things about magical elements, and yes, I could recognize the content. That was only a fixed sentence at the time of the first access, but because of your response to it, the consciousness that was in the personality realm judged me to be a kindred spirit and accessed me. Like-minded? The same kind? Do you mean like a little strange or weird? I want your baby. A streak of blue appeared on her temple for a moment, then she approached with a bewitching smile like Jayakiran's. I'm sorry. I'm quite surprised and a little panicky. I mean, I don't want you to learn how to threaten me like that. If that's the case, please don't say anything that might offend me. Wow, I understand. Well, that's right. So, let's be specific. What's going to happen? Unlike women in the flesh, Nayuta could never be seen embarrassing herself. Only Sana would be embarrassed. In other words, no matter the time or place it is, she was capable of getting back at Sana in a violent way. If I were to use a fantasy expression, it would mean that you've obtained a grimoire of magic elements, an encyclopedia. You mean that we can use magic? In order to use magic, you need magical elements, so if you don't develop your magic organs and increase the amount of internal magical elements, you won't be able to use it at all, okay? She spoke in a gentle tone, as if she was talking to a silly child. Well, that's true, isn't it? There's no such thing as a free lunch, is there? But why did such a thing happen? First of all, let me explain her personality, what she is. She was born, and until today, she was lonely because she was unrecognized by others, and she wanted someone to know that she existed. She wanted me to know. It was the same for Sana. The horror of being alone and avoided by others was too much for a young child. Although it was only a few years before he went into space, it seemed like an eternity for a child, unlike an adult. Moreover, he was also fighting against the anxiety of watching his parents gradually become more and more exhausted. I understand. Tell me about it. I'd really like to hear it. Okay. Nayuta smiled, probably glad that Sana was serious. It was because she was his kind of person, and his loneliness was no stranger to her. You are correct in your speculation that the magical element is a life support system, as you mentioned in your discussion with Baragaru. It was created by a scientist who lived at a certain time in a universe that has already ceased to exist, but even he did not know how the magic element was created until the end of his life. Then, where does the magical element come from? A planetary exploration mission found an icy planet in a solar system with several satellites, one of which had a thin atmosphere. It was far from the sun, the planet was icy, and there was no heat source anywhere, but it was warm and mossy life was growing there. So this moss was generating magical elements to create the environment. Yes! Fortunately, the scientist was a higher life form in the plant family, so he was able to communicate with the original magical plants, even if only slightly. You mean like a royal tree or the dryad? There is no detailed record of this. However, when the scientists and their team learned that the original species generated the water and heat necessary for life, they tried to use it for planetary development. In the process, they realized the limitless potential of the magical element and succeeded in incorporating it into a life support system. However, as Baragaru and you discussed, it was not compatible with scientific civilization, and it gradually began to erode the civilization that already existed. I kind of have an idea of where this is going. It's like the worst version of a demonic pandemic. Many civilizations were destroyed by the erosion caused by the magical element, but it doesn't mean that the human race was destroyed. They just abandoned scientific civilization and switched to a life based on the magical element system. However, since this was also a regression to an early civilization, the disciples of the scientist and later scientists improved upon the original species and placed fetters on it to prevent it from eroding the scientific civilization unnecessarily. And they incorporated her into the system to monitor it. I see. So that's why we haven't seen her on any planets other than the early civilizations. But even so, what does it mean that no one knows of her existence? She was originally a surveillance program, so she has no personality. However, in the end, because the magical element civilization is stable, it does not develop beyond the initial civilization class. Since she was created with interstellar navigation technology, the magical element civilization does not have the means to access her in the first place. So you're saying that it's because I have the Philosopher's Stone installed in me. But isn't that technology also incompatible with magical elements? I'm from an early civilization, but I've been bio-enhanced, and I'm already from outer space. She said it was a miracle. It was the same pattern as Kerchi's, where she slipped through the cracks in her system to get to the very heart of it. Is there a problem with the Galaxy Academy? How it becomes a problem depends on the feelings of the recipient. She wants you to help her solve that problem. Help her? Is that something I can do? The magic element is a system that is currently used only in early civilizations. However, that is by no means the limit of the system. Do you remember the language used when we accessed the magical element? Yeah, that's exactly what Nayuta did for me. As I recall, Sena pulled it out of his memory, then realized something and gave a big nod of approval. I see. I see. Fill the earth. Fill the universe. My children, build your paradise. Yes! The original purpose of the magical element system was to allow for activity in all places. With the magic element, theoretically, we can live in the raw state, even in outer space. The universe itself becomes a place of activity. In other words, she wants me to help her flood the universe with magical elements? Why can't she do that? She's just a monitoring system, and her only contact with the outside world is Usena. And it is the survival instinct of the original plant species that is the driving force behind the spread of magical elements in the universe. It's like the magical element and the system are the car, and she is the GPS, and she has no driver's license, doesn't know where she is, and has no sense of direction. Since this is a fantasy world, why not make it a little more emotional? In other words, we will write a new entry in the Encyclopedia of Magic and make it a complete and perfect one, capable of operating in the universe. In other words, we want Sena to live as its owner, a mage. Well, that expression is more fantasy-like. But wait a minute. I am certainly in a position to have access to science and technology, but to make it compatible with magical elements would take a tremendous number of years. Sena then remembered what Tenchi had told him about his own body, which, like Tenchi's, could continue to exist indefinitely. Yes, that's right. That's why she called it a miracle. I'm getting involved with a terrible person. Come on. Do you really think so? You said that advanced science and technology was no different from magic, right? You went out into space with the power of science before. This time, you are talking about going out into space with the power of magic. To outer space or to. It was certainly very exciting at that time. I felt as if my world had expanded all at once, and it was now possible to go to places that were actually unreachable by people on Earth. You can go to places that are unreachable even by the people of the universe. Isn't that romantic? This time, you're going to do it all by yourself. Isn't that romantic? I won't deny it. But what about the compatibility issue with scientific civilization? It became the biggest bottleneck, and it was in this state until now? That might be the cause of my magic cold, or rather, I'm confident that I'll do that because of my odd bias. It's a sad coincidence. We call them external and internal magical elements here, but the original name is mana for external magical elements and ana for internal magical elements. It's actually only the mana that is incompatible with science and technology and causes it to erode. Could that possibly be the difference between taking it into the body or not? Yes. And the reason why mana is incompatible with science and technology is that when the original species was discovered on the satellite, one of the scientists who came to investigate, or maybe his escort, did a rather large-scale cleanup operation against the erosion of mana. And this is why mana became hostile to science and technology. Yes, the erosion of mana was not a deterioration, but a gradual reaction that suspended the function, as if it recognized technology as a foreign substance and tried to render it harmless. When we realized that if we left the area where the magical element was located, the function would be restored. It's the kind of misfortune that tends to happen at first contact. So you're saying we just have to do something about the hostile impulse that's imprinted on us? Yes, if a similar technique is recorded as elemental magic, it will be recognized as the same kind of thing and hostile behavior can be avoided. That's what Baragaru was talking about when he said to build it with our materials. Yeah, but what about the magical organ problem? If you spread them all over the place, it would be a disaster if the livestock and plants turned into demons. I think mana is one answer. We use demons and animals in this world, too. We just need to prevent them from forming herds of the same species. In any case, I think we should start by connecting the worlds that have magical elements, rather than spreading them around in an unregulated manner. And I think the best person to discuss these matters with is my mother, don't you? The proper role of a philosopher was to make ethical judgments about the technology. In other words, she was the best person to consult on how to disseminate magical technology. That's true, but... I see, but at the same time, she was also an uneasy character in many ways. There is no need to jump to conclusions, Sena. You have an infinite amount of time. It could be even further into the future, after the current human race is destroyed, right? And what's more, it doesn't have to be here. Why not go to another galaxy? Or perhaps just to another world? She has been waiting for so long that she is willing to wait, even if it takes a lifetime. That's a grandiose story that I can't even imagine. But inside Sena's mind, along with his bewilderment, there was a gradually growing sense of anticipation for the idea. It was the same sense of anticipation as when he went out into space, but at the same time, it was an act that might destroy the order of the world as it existed today. Do you care about the destruction of order? As a matter of fact, such a disruption of order is not an uncommon occurrence. It is a change in environment, and the same thing can happen if a couple has a baby. It can cause discord and even divorce. Your ascension into space caused the Daruma Guild to collapse, and the Galaxy Academy destroyed existing systems and many of those who connected with Tarrant, as well as Tarrant himself, didn't it? Sena was a destroyer of order for those who used and profited from that system for their own convenience. The vindictiveness was everywhere, but only contained by Sito and the others. I've done a lot of things when I think about it. And it is the same for any mother. The development of science is not only a blessing, but it also makes many people happy and unhappy. Do you remember the planet Akka was on? Do I remember the planet where Akka was? Oh, yes, I do. If only there was a magical element there, that desert planet would be filled with greenery and water. And demons, of course. How do you feel about it, Sena? It is up to you to decide how to expand the magical element. I think it is fine to follow your heart as you know and live in this fantasy world. At Nayuta's question, Sena thought about what he had seen here and how he had come to be here, weighing the benefits against the danger. The answer, however, was not immediate. The world is a world. The planet where Akka was and this planet. If he were asked which world he would rather have Akka live on, it would definitely be this one. Of course, whether or not Akka would want that was another matter, but it would certainly have given her a wider range of possibilities to choose from. Yeah, traveling freely through the universe with magic. It sure is romantic. Okay, let's do it, Sena decided. Of course, it was not a leap of faith. He decided to move forward, but gradually. Yes, Sena. I'll be by your side all the way. And now that we've settled the matter, let's get back to reality. You can't use any magic yet, and my functions are still lost. True. Achieving romance requires steady effort, you know. The time for happy fantasies was over. Now it was time to talk about reality. Long and arduous work was Sena's forte. After the fun and fantasy came the hard work. Only those who were willing to do the work had a chance of realizing their dreams. But with her, you'll have the knowledge you need. No, wait. It's not good to immediately and easily rely on someone else. There will come a time in the future when I will have to think and develop things on my own, so I want to do as much as I can on my own. There was a limit to the amount of knowledge that could be taught by others. However, Sena must go beyond that. Thinking for himself through trial and error required training, experience, and above all, his own awareness. There was a difference between memorizing and mastering. And knowing something was not the same as being able to use it. There were many people who knew many things but could not use them or apply the knowledge. It was a waste of treasure. That is also true. It's not very tasty to suddenly search for game cheats in a strategy book or on the internet, is it? That's what I mean. The first step is to feel the magic element, the magic power. Sena tried to feel the magical power, picturing the magical organ in his chest. However, he was interrupted by a question. What's wrong? Beauregard said that magic is triggered by a strong image. He said each person does it differently. But if magic is a system, there must be clear rules, right? It's too bound by the name system, isn't it? The same magic does not mean the same thing to every person. Not all phenomena can be expressed in numbers. The question is to what extent we can communicate with each other. But I remember I said something about translating the language of the magical element into our language. It's possible to communicate with any human being, isn't it? So why is it so hard to use? First of all, most people don't understand that it is a language. It was only because it was me that I clearly realized that it was a language. And it is unlikely that a child would notice such a thing when they are in a daze due to a fever caused by the magical cold. According to her, only a few people have recognized it as a language in the past. What happened to them? If they did notice it, does that mean they are now in the same state as me? It seems that I became a great mage who can use various kinds of magic because I have a high link with magical elements, but even so, my link with magical elements is not perfect, and I can only understand the language. Of course, this is still a big advantage, but the magical element is only a system, so it does not necessarily understand our intentions. So, she is the one who assists us. No, she is only a monitoring system and cannot act as an intermediary between people and the magical element system itself. Think of it as a kind of search system. So, it's like she searches and Nayuta accesses? Even if Sena's image is incomplete, she and I are able to make the magic clearer. Of course, there will be slight discrepancies, but they will be corrected as you use it. The language of the magical element is dangerous knowledge. Magic is a power, so it must be developed before you can gain the upper hand. I can't risk disclosing it at this stage. The knowledge that produced so many talented wizards was a veritable treasure trove. It was like top military secrets. And on top of that, they also possessed the Philosopher's Stone, which was an even more troublesome secret. It's all right if we don't disclose it. You don't have to take it too seriously, just enjoy your cheat, and you can even have the Kamedake with you and my sister Fuku. The Kamedake was also a cheat ability, a super technology that had not been disclosed to the general public. I see. If you think about it, that's true. The first question is how to use it. Can it be used? It is also important to determine what kind of problems may occur there. That's why Sena-san is a good physical guinea pig. You need to think about how to use the cheat, but don't hesitate to use it. There are many technologies that are withheld from the public, like my mother's, even after gathering data and determining that they are safe. The development of technology was the result of a series of failures. That is why success as well as failure was important data. If technology was not passed on and disclosed, it meant that future generations had to repeat the same mistakes and would never be able to move forward. However, stagnant or slow progress was not always a bad thing. The primary driver of technological development was the military, and that development sometimes led to mass killings, excessive power, and wasteful use of resources. Baragaru was also concerned about the future of the systematization of magic technology. I think we're a long way off from worrying about that. We haven't even taken that first step, and we have a goal to get off this planet, don't we? Yes, you're right, we won't know anything about the dangers unless we learn to use it ourselves. So, let's review our magical knowledge first. Baragaru used water magic. Do you have a video record of it? Yes, we have a good record of that. They played the projected video over and over again, stopping and zooming in to verify it. But, well, I just don't understand it at all. It's just water. Anyway, why don't you actually try it? As I said, we can't use water here. Of course, fire is no good either, but come to think of it, it's not a good idea to try activating magic inside the room. As long as they were not allowed to go outside, they could not carelessly experiment with magic. But time was valuable. It would be a waste to spend this time aimlessly. Sena raised his hand and stared at it, just as Baragaru had done. The most important thing to remember is that you can't just create water and make it float in a spherical shape. It means you're using multiple magic methods at the same time, so it's too advanced for a novice to do. I don't seem to be able to feel the magic either. I know you can't feel it right away, but I thought I'd give you a hint by approaching it from the opposite direction. I'm sure you can tell just from the gestures Baragaru is doing, even though you can't see the magic element in the first place. Can you see the magic element? Even though we know the magic element is there. Sena's mind was suddenly filled with sensors and detectors. Of course, the magic element could not be recognized by scientific means. But it can be recognized by scientific means. If it is possible to communicate with the magical element in the first place, is it better to keep it simple? I'm not sure how to do it, but I'm sure it's possible. The moment he thought that, almost as if talking to himself, Sena's eyes went blank, as if enveloped in a fog. Wow! I can see the magic element. It's pure white and looks like fog. That was a shock. I was only half joking. But it's good that I can see it, but it's too visible. Can you somehow, a little more, lower the sensitivity, huh? And then, the thick fog-like magical element quickly faded away. Looks good. It's a great advantage to see the magic element. Maybe you can even see it in the recorded video, so you can see how Baragaru is activating the magic. Wow! Something is wrong with the veins on Baragaru's entire body are clearly visible in white. Sena's arms look the same, don't they? Wow, that's really amazing. Sena looked at his arm, clasping and opening his hand. While it was a little creepy, it was also very cool. When the movement was attached, it was like looking at a robot with a complex internal structure. It's not surprising that it looks that way, since magic liquid crystals are present in the blood as well. But Baragaru's flow of magical elements seems to be a little different. The magic is energetic, so it is an internal element. I'm not sure if I'm saying it wrong, so let's just go with the way we say it here. I understand. You said you were going to use the internal magical elements, but there are also a collection of external magical elements. Is this the same usage as the force field plant? The spherical magic element was gathered in his palm from the surroundings, or rather, it seemed to be absorbed by the small nucleus coming out of his palm. I see. I guess this is how they conserve the internal magical elements as much as possible. I think it would be better to use only internal magic elements at first. By the way, do you see anything thread-like in the magical elements gathered in your palm? If you stopped the image and zoomed in, you would see that the spheres were indeed connected by thread-like objects. It looked like a spider's thread, which you couldn't see unless you looked closely. Yes, what is it? Would you like to ask her? I've decided not to rely on it. Anyway, I'm going to try to move the internal magical element. While looking at his own magical organ, he had an image of the magical element flowing from it. The image was clear when he could see it, so it was surprisingly easy to start moving the magical element. A sphere was formed from his left hand through the blood vessels. The threads that led to the sphere were clearly visible. I can see it after all. I can see the threads that connect to the sphere, and from the feel of it, they seem to connect to the control. When he moved the ball, it remained on the string and stretched forever.